The Powerhouse at Evanston on my layout is in a state of ruin. Let's go trackside so that I can show you just how I ruined it. I'm Roy Smith. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to show you what I have done to the Powerhouse in the railroad complex at Evanston on my layout. The last time you saw the Powerhouse, it looked like this. And this is what it looks like today. I want to show you how I carried out this transformation because you may find the techniques that I am about to share with you to be useful when working on your own structures. Remember, that's what we do on this channel. We share the hobby. So if you're into model railroading, be sure to subscribe if you haven't done it yet, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. I'm going to take you through the steps I followed as I worked on the Powerhouse, but before doing that, I'd like to mention three things. First, I was planning to show you how I'm installing the Woodland Scenics Just Plugged lighting system at the railroad complex in today's episode. But I couldn't do that because I needed to order some additional system components first. Those components have arrived, too late for today's video, but in time for my next video. The second thing I want to mention is this. I showed you this dilapidated structure in the red circle in my last video. I called it a shack because it's in a state of complete ruin. Since uploading that video, I have learned that the structure was a hostler's building. Hostlers, of course, are the guys who prepare locomotives for the day's operations. But I still don't know who built the structure or when it was built. But it may have been built by the tank car repair company which leased the roundhouse from the city of Evanston from the 1970s through 1998, when the company moved to a new facility. And the third thing I want to mention is this. I have been watching the NMRA Gateway X Model Railroad Convention online from morning to night all this week. I have been enjoying the NMRA clinics immensely. Sadly, the online convention ends tonight, so if you haven't already been watching it, I encourage you to go on over and join the remaining clinics today. It's live on Facebook and on YouTube. Now then, the Powerhouse. Back in April, I showed you how I put the Powerhouse kit together initially using this Walther's kit, and I showed you how I modified the kit to resemble the prototype more closely. You may recall that I had to change the kit from a rectangular shape into a trapezoidal shape to fit the space that I had for it on my layout. That video was called Evanston Renovation 12, How to Kit Bash a Power Plant. I will put a link to it down below. Today I want to show you how I continued to modify the Powerhouse so that it looks more like the prototype and how I weathered it heavily to make it look like it's abandoned, boarded up, and in a state of ruin. This end and the windows on this end didn't match the prototype, so I needed to change it to match the prototype. Note the windows and doors of the prototype. I took off the piece that I had previously used as the back of the structure in order to use it to replace the existing end piece. Of course, I had to cut it to fit. This is where it will go. I needed this architectural trim from the existing end of the building for the new end. I think it's called a parapet, but I'm not really sure since I'm not an architect. In any case, I cut that trim off the old end and glued it onto the new end. And I used styrene for the new back on the structure. I cut out these two openings at the corner of the structure. In just a moment, I will install doors and windows here to match the prototype. Then I repainted the entire structure, especially the new end. Next, I painted the window frames a dark brown and the doors a deep red to match the prototype. Now the window glass. As you can see, it's still attached to the sprues. I wanted the glass to be all cracked and broken, just like on the prototype, so I began to scratch it with an X-Acto knife to create the appearance of cracks. Then I cut the glass off the sprues. It's especially important that you wear protective goggles for what we are going to do next. You will want to wear protective goggles for this step because pieces of the glass will fly everywhere, some of which you will never see again. I'm cutting the glass into pieces, and indeed some of it is flying away as I do this. That's okay because glass is often missing from broken windows. Now I'm gluing the broken glass onto the window frame using liquid cement. Just a dab here and there on the window frame where I want to put the glass. This is working well for me, producing a bunch of broken windows. Why are the windows broken? I don't know, but kids do love to throw rocks through the windows of abandoned buildings. You can see the broken glass easier when I hold the window up to a light. Now I'm making the window frames and glass appear to be dirty and dusty by applying sand-colored weathering pastels. Again, you can see the effect of doing this when I hold the window up to a light. Now it's time to install the windows in the structure. I'm using liquid cement to do this. By the way, this is one of the few times when it's okay to get some of that liquid cement right on the glass. As it dries, it will simulate the appearance of cracks in the glass. Okay, I have installed all of the windows and doors. Next, the roof. Remember, the prototype is rectangular shaped, but on my layout the structure is shaped like a trapezoid. I assembled the structure that way to fit the available space I had for it, but its trapezoid shape is not visible when looking at it from the front of the layout. So I have to cut the roof to fit this trapezoid shape. I begin to do this by taping the two halves of the roof together temporarily. Then I secure the roof to the structure, again using blue painter's tape. And I turn the structure upside down in preparation for cutting the roof to fit. At this point, my wife told me that I could have been an architect. Now I'm marking where to cut the roof with a Sharpie. And I'm removing the roof from the structure to cut it more easily. Meanwhile, I have installed trusses to support the roof, and having cut the roof to match the trapezoid shape of the structure, I can now put it in place. But I'm not gluing it on just yet. You may be wondering why I'm installing the roof upside down on the Powerhouse. Well, you see these 6 posts? Actually, there were 8 of them, but 2 of them were removed when I cut the roof to fit the structure. Anyhow, these posts were intended to serve as bases for the roof vents that came with the kit. But the prototype only has 3 roof vents, so my model will only have 3 roof vents, as you will see in a moment. By hiding the 6 posts underneath, they are not visible on my model. I have boarded up some of the doors and windows like on the prototype, using styrene painted to look like old weathered plywood. Boarding up the building like this makes it more difficult for the kids to break in. Next, a dim interior light. I have brought the structure over here to the other end of Evanston on my layout, where I've got some Woodland Scenics just plugged lighting components that are used to light up the roundhouse. I have ordered more of these components that will allow me to light up the machine shop and the powerhouse in their permanent locations. But why, you may ask, would I put a light in the powerhouse? After all, the prototype is abandoned and has no interior lighting. Well, I decided to make this look like sunlight is coming in through the windows, but my real motive was to make it possible to see the broken glass in the windows. So I can dimly light up the powerhouse during the day on my layout as if sunlight is coming in through the windows, but turn it off at night just when I am turning on the lighting in the other structures. I positioned the bulb so that it is not visible from outside of the structure, because if you could see the bulb through the windows, that would ruin the illusion of sunlight. Next, I went to install a skylight on the roof just like the one on the prototype. In order to create such a skylight, I'm using some windows that came with the kit. I'm gluing a row of them together end to end for each of the two sides of the skylight. Here you can see the skylight on top of the roof. I have already painted and weathered it and the roof itself. Next, I'm going to weather the rest of the structure using pan pastels. I think this is the most important step in making the structure look old and abandoned and in a state of ruin, in sharp contrast to the machine shop and roundhouse, which have been renovated. I really like pan pastels. They are soft, making them easy to apply, and the colors adhere to the structure very nicely. Now let's go back to the roof where I want to try something unusual. Take a look at the roof on the prototype. It looks oxidized and rusty and appears to have many years of accumulated dust and dirt on it. I want the roof on my powerhouse to look like that. To help create that effect, I'm going to apply this fine natural soil and dirt from Scenic Express. Here I'm doing just that, applying a little white glue and sifting on the natural soil and dirt. Roofs are important on our structures because on our layouts, we generally look down on them from above. Here you can see not only the top of the skylight, but also the 3 roof vents that I mentioned earlier. And here it is, finished at last. I'm learning about working with structures as I go, and I am pleased with the way that the powerhouse has turned out. Again, my goal in working on the powerhouse was to create a structure that looks old, abandoned, and in a state of ruin. As always, it has been a pleasure to share my progress with you. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't done it yet. You can watch other episodes in the Evanston Renovation series just by clicking over here. I'm Roy Smith. Until next time, happy railroading.